afternoon, everybody. I've just arrived home. You've no doubt heard we had a battery malfunction. But thankfully, we were just around the corner from the Sumac Centre. The poor man next door was moving into his house where we were delivering food. And I just felt terrible. He was unloading his car one box at a time, one item at a time. And possibly for the first time in my life, I felt unable to help. And that doesn't sit well with me. The car then wouldn't start, so I had to ring Patrick, who very kindly drove with the van, and George and everybody to come and help me. So the car is now working, hopefully, and I'm back at home. I suppose, like most of us, the last few days have been filled with worry about what's going on in America, and certainly how that goes on to affect predominantly poor people. I wrote this poem a long time ago, and it's really for days like today. And it's called Yes, Yesterday. Yes, yesterday she found out her child was dead on social media. The child she carried for 40 weeks, writing the minute changes in his red book. How many teeth? His weight, his height. But yes, yesterday, she found out that his was the face on the news. Her child, who she held to her breast, carried within her body. Her dreams for him were many. Her fears were of exam results and debts, but they fade as his face stares out from the papers. They come with microphones to ask, how do you feel? As if she can explain memories of sleepless nights, of cradling him, of being vomited on and peed on. A lump forms in her throat. How can she continue to breathe in a world where he does not? How can she grieve when people look at her that way? The mother, her heart breaks, but her love for him lives on.
Hey! Hey!
I have an eagle on the other side of the room, so if you hear any random clapping, that is my husband. And on a similar vein, interestingly, we've had American singers and poets and artists stay over, and a couple of them have said that for their first few weeks in England, they were scared. And when we examined why, it was a case of, oh, well, knife crime. So they'd obviously heard about knife crime in London and how widespread it is. And one of the guys who came to stay remarked afterwards, I find it really odd that I come from a country where police own armed rifles, and I come to a country and I'm scared of a knife. At least a knife has another purpose. I would suggest guns don't really have many. So I wrote this poem some time ago, and it's similar. I tend to write about the effects on women of how things impact on them. And this is called Knife. I want my mum. I don't want to die, was his unheard final cry. But the factory that crafted the knife, the woman on minimum wage who packed it, the van driver who drove it to London, and the shop worker trying just to eke a living. This knife was meant to cut potatoes, onions, tomatoes and lettuce. Definitely not the flesh of a 17-year-old boy with so much promise. Thank you. Are you clapping, husband? Oh, kind, aren't you? Clapping, bless your little heart. Oh, now I'm going to do an a cappella version of one of Activista's songs, and it's something that we we can't do it at the moment because of the lovely coronavirus. But I think it gives out quite a big message, really, to the Borises and their coming to this world. As I walked out through the city centre, the drunks were raging, and all the blue lights flashing, and the only shoots growing are of discontentment. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From the coast of Cornwall to the Scottish Highlands, from the sacred forests to the holy islands. This land was made for you and me. The derelict buildings and the cold rough sleepers, where the wind is whistling, white lightning flowing, police whistles blowing, and the poor arrested. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From the coast of Cornwall to the Scottish Highlands, from the sacred forest to the holy islands. This land was made for you and me. I saw a sign there when I went walking, and the words upon it said no immigration, but on the other side it said all are welcome. And this side was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From the coast of Cornwall to the Scottish Highlands, from the sacred forests to the holy islands. This land was made for you and me. To the coast of Blackpool, the lorries went rolling, met by protesters to protect the landscape from the greedy bastards. No thought for the future. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From the coast of Cornwall to the Scottish Highlands, from the sacred forests to the holy islands. This land was made for you and me, not Boris Johnson. This land was made for you and me, no Nigel Farage. This land was made for you and me.
No fucking Tommy Robinson!
Yes. No.
Hey!
Nasty little creature. Tommy Robinson. Right. I suppose I better let him know who I am, as well as helping to deliver food and getting stuck in the car and all that kind of stuff. Basically, I work with homeless adults in Nottingham. At the moment, we're closed because nobody really knows what's going on. But it was a delight 2 days ago to have a staff meeting on Zoom and see everybody. But I've worked with homeless people for about 30 years in Nottingham, and at one point I genuinely thought it was getting better. And then it got worse. And now it looks like to get worse again. Because I remember a time when people were literally in every doorway. And yet word from Manchester is that is every doorway in normal times now. And I thought we got away from that. So this is a poem from a long time ago. And it's called Ghosts. They haunt my dreams as I recall the lost, the dead, the desperate. And yet I smile as I walk back in my mind to a hall filled with metal beds, no curtains, no dignity, 2 showers for 50 people, and a queue to secure a much sought after bed. But all these years later, a new government decides to close the beds, limit the access. Please, please, don't let us return to deaths in doorways. Thank you. Another couple about people I've worked with. This is called Margaret. You were the bag lady with no bag, pushing your trolley up Hockley. You told me this was your trolley, as it cost you £1. But the coin has long since been prized from its home. Trolley filled with shopping. Not from the toothpaste family, but filled with your treasure. Old newspapers, bottles, half-eaten food. Your toothless grin and your motherly bosom. And this is one of my friends who was a kleptomaniac. You know a true kleptomaniac because they steal things that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. When you look at them and when you ask them why they want them, they go, and I think in this time of loss, I'd like to read this. And I suppose I was quite fortunate. My first husband was related by marriage to an old friend of my parents. And she died recently. Well, she died in 2014, so that's 6 years ago, but that's recent in my mind. I'm sometimes horrified that 1990 is 30 years ago. It's just impossible. And I'm sure you've all got it wrong. And so this is a poem for my friend Sylvia, who I was honoured to do her service, her funeral. He looks at me with eyes red from crying, and he says it wasn't the plan. He was 7 years older. He should definitely have gone first. He describes in detail the shocking events of the past 3 days, of ambulance men refusing to let him drive, of a ward full of the cacophony of life, and at the end, a side room, quiet, and her one request: please don't let me die with my eyes open. As she breathes her last, he leans over with a kiss and closes the eyes of his bride of 60 years.
Hey! Whoa! Whoa!
They hardly like poems to clap, but never mind. I just, my heart hurts. I look at what's going on in the world. I look at what's happening on the news. I try and avoid it because it hurts my heart. But then I check on with what Pauline Town's doing, who is one of our friends from Ashton. And I look at her posts of looking after people, feeding them, housing them, whatever. And my heart feels a little bit better. But it takes its toll, I think, is the truth. Right. Now, I suffer from depression, which has probably come over in the dour nature of my set. But I wrote a poem about my depression, which I've had since a teenager. So if that's you and you're out there and you're thinking it's only you, it's not, it's me as well. And if you need somebody to talk to, please, please, please ask. Because I know for certain all of us would sooner talk to somebody than go to their funeral. And I personally have lost too many people at their own hands because this world is a cruel and heartless place. And our job, really, all of us, is to make that not so, to do something about it. And so I wrote a poem about my depression, and you've often heard depression called my black dog or black dog. So this is to my black dog. I wish I knew how to turn my black dog into a puppy that had licked my face and roll over and have its tummy tickled. Or an old dog, panting while sleeping on the porch as I snuggle his back, instead of a snarling, drooling nightmare hound, egged on by his bonehead handler. Go away. Then I could remove the muzzle and bark at the retreating coward who held the reins. Then I wish I could push my face into his soft fur and gaze in eyes of love without conditions. Yet you, with your dummy, playing Incy-Wincy Spider on the bus window, you seem unafraid or even unaware of its very presence as we nudge fingers. Now, the reason I was just laughing is my silly husband just did an impression of a dog, and he already looks a bit like a dog, but he had his tongue out and he was on his knees, so it's all a bit weird in this art. No. And Eagle wants me to do a song, but I think I did this last Girls Are Loud, but he wants me to do it anyway. There is a time in every month just before I come on, when tension mounts and tempers fray. So I sing this PMT song. My mother tries to calm me down when I can't get in my jeans. It happens to women from Brixton, to women in New Orleans. Don't question me on what I do. The point you make could be so. I'll reduce you verbally to jelly just to settle the score. Sex and shopping are tiresome when your brain feels full of lead. My husband, he shouts for his dinner, but it's burnt, so I kick him inside. So you men, you must show pity like we do when you're under strain. You're not allowed to be shitty when you're suffering from PMT pain. There you go, husband.
Thank you. Whoa! Whoa!
Oh, more. What's he like? Right. Let me have a look, shall I? I wrote a poem for Eagle's dad as well. It was about the time his mum had passed, and I was very conscious of the love between his parents. And so I wrote him this, and it was for Terry. For richer, he glances at her in her white dress, now on the faded photographs. For poorer, chasing rabbits to feed his family of 6. In sickness, he struggles with his walker down long corridors just to hold her hand. And in health, he recalls the tug-of-war, working what felt like 8 days a week just to bring the crop in. Till death us do part. He awaits the end with dignity, and he loves her, with the love of 57 years behind them. He walks toward an unknown future, alone, until he joins her. Right. Let's have a think. Ooh, that's a different one. This is an old poem and it's about punk rock, really. And it says, in no longer smoky halls we stand, beer in hand at night, our eardrums ringing, as left and right spiked coloured plumage keeps the noise alive. In a world where the conformists now sport pink hair and tattoos. Eagle obviously don't like these ones. Oh yeah, he's changed his mind.
Hey! Hey! Yes, go!
Shut up, you nonna.
I'm only fucking audience. I have to make the noise.
Why can't you move around a bit so you look like an audience? Just move around the room. Yay, go Eagle. Go on, you can be an audience. I wish you could see him. Basically, we're peace protesters. We have been known to protest at our air bases, and Eagle has been known to use the back entrance with a pair of wire cutters. You know how it is. So I wrote a poem when we were peace campaigning, and we still actively deplore the use of unmanned drones to kill civilians. And one of the things that we absolutely abhor is the fact that children in other parts of the world don't go out if it's sunny, because the planes can fly when it's sunny, the drone can see. So children have been known to say, oh, I don't want to go out today, I'll go out when it's dark because it's not so scary. And that's very, very worrying. So I wrote this, and it's called You Are Cordially Invited. They went to a wedding, oh what joy, dancing and rejoicing. But shortly before the sun dipped behind the mountains and left a handful of modest stone-built homes and grazing goats in a fading silhouette, the ground shook. 47 guests died that day as an accurate drone fell and ripped the celebration apart. But I know for certain, if this crime was perpetuated in London or Birmingham, heads would roll. Monuments would be erected and a war crimes trial started. But when the guests don't speak English and the victims are from foreign lands, with us and our allies the aggressor, I never hear mention of the Geneva Convention. Right, so that's me really. Basically today's all about the girls. Every little you can send will make a difference. If you've seen the photographs of the shoes, that's what we bought last month. We'd like them all to have a blanket to lay under as they go to sleep. If you just imagine for a moment all of those children in 2 rooms. Think about it. When you go to bed tonight and it's too cold and you're under your duvet and you grab another blanket, those children hug one another for warmth. Their parents are gone because of Ebola, not massively dissimilar, if not more infectious than COVID. And Sesay's brother and his mother have become parents in loco parentis for these children. And for that, I thank you. And I sincerely thank you for anything you can afford to donate. And if you can't afford, just enjoy the show, because you are loved as much as they are. So I'll bid you adieu, and I'll say goodbye for now. See you later.
Turn it off.